Vrijdenkersfestival bij de Balie.
Good evening and welcome at the Free Thinkers Festival. My name is Rogaya Sek and I'm program maker here at the Balie. 611 days of genocide. 570 of those I lived in Gaza, under bombardment, among the ruins, the hunger and the death. And now I've been in Marseille for 40 days. I survived, but I haven't really left. With these words, published in NRC last June, journalist Rita Baroud captured the unbearable tension between survival and loss. Rita now stays in Amsterdam, and I'm deeply honored that she's here with us tonight. And also here with us tonight is writer Maurits de Bruijn. As a prominent voice in the Dutch public debate on Israel and Palestine, he received an invitation from an NGO to travel to Israel and Palestine to report on the human rights violations taking place there. And in his book, Geweten, Conscious, came out of that Geweten came out of that experience. And in the upcoming 1.5 hours, we will talk about the genocide in Gaza, and specifically about how one writes about such immense cruelties and big injustice. So let's start by welcoming Rita Baroud on stage. What do you want me to do? To read the piece.
Hello, everyone. Thank you for coming today. So I'm going to read a piece that I wrote it this morning, and it's called Writing from Fire. There was a night in Gaza when I thought words had burned. The air was full of smoke, and I remember thinking that maybe language could not survive this much fire. I had no electricity, no signal, no light, only the orange reflection of bombs on the wall. I wrote in the dark using the last battery of my phone because I was afraid that silence would be worse than death. Sometimes I think of that moment as the beginning of my life as a writer and a journalist. Not because I wanted to write, but because I had no choice. When everything disappears, words are the only things left. People often ask me, how do you write about genocide? The truth is, I don't. I write about the sound of water that doesn't come, the bread that never reached the table, the body under the blanket that nobody can move. I write about brothers' voices, about the feeling of not being able to protect them. Writing is not a way to describe violence. It's a way to stay alive inside it. It's my breath when air becomes dust. When I was in Gaza, I used to tell myself, if I die, thanks God that I'm survived. If I die, maybe someone will read these words and know that we were here. Now that I'm alive, I tell myself the same thing. If I stop writing, it will be as if we never existed. When the war began, days lost their names. Morning and night becomes the same color, gray and red. We stopped counting the hours, we only counting who was still alive. In Gaza, life became smaller and smaller until it could fit inside one room. That room was everything: kitchen, shelter, home, hospital, and sometimes grave. We shared one piece of bread between 5 people or more. We cooked over fire made from wood or plastic. Every day, I woke up with the same question. Will we eat today? Will we survive tonight? But even in those moments, I kept writing. Not because I was brave. I wasn't, to be honest. I was scared all the time, but I wrote. I wrote because it helped me breathe. It was my way of saying, I'm still here. I remember the sound of my little brother crying because he wanted to go outside. I remember my mother cutting a tomato into thin slices to make it look like more. I remember the silence after the explosion. That strange silence when everyone looks at each other to see who's still alive. There was one night when we thought we wouldn't make it. The sky was burning. The house next to ours disappeared in seconds. We could hear people screaming, but we couldn't reach them. My hands were shaking. I opened my phone and started typing. Just a few sentences. If we die tonight, please tell the world that we were ordinary people. We were civilians. We wanted to live. We had dreams. Later, when I sent those words to a journalist abroad, they became a story, but not to me. They were never just a story. They were my heartbeat. Writing during war is not about describing what happens. It's about trying to stay human when everything around you says you shouldn't be alive. When I left Gaza, I didn't feel free. I felt broken, lost, like I had left my own skin behind. People told me, "Congratulations, you survived." But I didn't know survival meant anymore. In Gaza, survival meant staying alive for one more hour or one more night. Outside, it meant learning how to live with the pain of leaving everyone and everything behind you. The first days in exile were too quiet. No pumps, no smoke, no smell of burning, but inside me, the noise continued. The war doesn't end when you cross the border. It stayed inside your body, in your heartbeat, in your dreams, in the way you look at food, in the way you count silence. Sometimes I feel guilty for eating, for sleeping safely, for seeing the sky without drones. I think of my family or friends who are still there, of those who will never come back, but I always wonder why me. I know that guilt is useless, but it's honest. It reminds me that my story didn't end at the border. It only changed shape. Now, when I write, I don't write about Gaza. I write from Gaza. Even if I am far away, the place doesn't leave you. It lives in your bones, in your accent, in the way you choose your words. People sometimes tell me, you should move on. You should to take care of yourself. You have to start a new life. But how can I? My life is counting of theirs. My freedom carries their names. So I write. not because I want to look back, but because I can't look away. Sometimes I wonder that it means to speak when so many others have been silent. In Gaza, voices disappear faster than buildings. You learn to speak softly, not because you are weak, but because you are always afraid of being the next to vanish. Now, standing here, far from the place, I ask myself, what is my voice worth? Every word I say carries the weight of the ones who can't speak anymore. Journalists, mothers, children, poets, doctors. I am only an echo of them. When people read my texts, they often tell me they feel pain, but pain is not the goal. The goal is connection. To remind each other that humanity is still possible, even in the middle of destruction. Writing is not about explaining Gaza. It's about refusing to let Gaza disappear. It's about saying we are still here, even when the world would rather look away. Sometimes I still dream of home. In my dream, the streets are empty, but I can hear the sea. I walk barefoot. For a moment, it feels like nothing ever happened. Then I wake up and I remember everything happened. But I also remember this, that silence is not the peace. And that speaking, even with a trembling voice, is from resistance. So I speak again and again because I owe it to those who can't. Because I owe it to the land that raised me. Because the real burial beings only when we fall silent. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Do people really tell you you should move on?
Yeah, a lot of people, they are asking me to move on, and I was like, okay, patient.
You wrote, writing is not about explaining Gaza, it's about refusing to let Gaza disappear. It is about saying we are still here, even when the world would rather look away. Yeah. Can you tell us about your life growing up in Gaza City?
Before the 7th of October? Mm-hmm. Well, everyone have to know that Gaza was the most beautiful place in this world. I went to many places, and before also the genocide, I traveled many times. I have never ever felt warm like how I felt in Gaza. My life in Gaza and everyone in Gaza was so simple. Everyone was like just trying to have simple life, trying to have their future in Gaza, because my generation knew that having a future in Gaza is impossible when you are having Israel, Hamas, and this stuff. So for me as a teenager, and when I was younger, I always dreamed to leave Gaza for the rest of my life. And before the genocide, I was close to graduate. And then I said, Khalas, now I will go to do my master's degree in Europe.
Khalas means enough, right?
Enough, like, Khalas. I spent 20 years of my life in Gaza. But when this genocide came and began, I felt how I was so loyal to this city. Like, I didn't expect myself to love this city. And till now, I'm trying to reminding myself always about how Gaza looks before the genocide.
Can you remember?
Yeah, for sure.
Can you tell us?
The sea was the most beautiful place there. It was my favorite place. So when I arrived France, they told me, oh, now you live in Marseille. There is the same sea in Gaza. And I was looking at them, I said like, yeah, but fuck you all. It's, it's not the same sea. It's not the same air. It's not the same feeling. I am looking at the same sea, but from out of Gaza. The city was so simple. We didn't had a really luxury hotels or a culture places like the Balie. We didn't have tram or metros or stations to travel. But we had a good people, a genius people. And for me, Gaza city is not about the land. It's about my people. That's why I always keep reminding myself about my people. And that's why, even if I want to quit journalism, to be honest, I only say like, yeah, but I'm doing this for the 2 million behalf of me in Gaza, because they left alone, and I'm not the only one who's going to live them, like how the world acts for Gaza.
Thank you. And what way did the occupation influenced your life before the 7th of October?
Yeah, you are talking about occupation. Imagine if Amsterdam is occupied by German or something like this. You are not allowed to even go out of Amsterdam, or you are not even to see the rest of the world. This is the least thing that I can tell you. And everything was so hard. Everything was so fucked up because of the occupation. So sometimes I feel like I can't answer this question, because when people are asking me how your life looks like when you are living with occupation, I feel like maybe you have to go to Gaza and experience this so you can understand, because talking about it without experiencing it, it's totally different. So, yeah.
Still, I'm going to ask these questions because
It's okay.
Then the 7th of October happened. What happened from your experience, from your perspective?
When the 7th of October happened, I was up all night as usual because I don't sleep. So I was playing on my guitar. And then I heard something in the sky. I said, okay, new war. I didn't imagine it's a genocide. And then we heard about what happened that day, and I was like, what the fuck is this? Israel is going to fuck us all. Because we didn't expect, like me, I didn't expect that this is going to happen that day. And when we saw the news, blah, 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 I was looking at people. They are, some of them celebrating, but the people that have the knowledge that I have, they knew that it's not going to be easy this time. So
what were your thoughts that day?
I was afraid from the reaction of Israelis. Like,
did you already expected what was going to happen?
No, of course. But I knew that it will be in a real dark way. And it will not going to be easy or normal war. Because, you know, unfortunately, when this genocide started, people thought that, oh, it's just going to be for 3 weeks or 4 weeks or for 1 month at least or 2 months. But I was just like, no, it's going to be for years. It's not going to be just for weeks or months. What happened that day is not that easy on Israel.
And then a few days later, your house got targeted, right?
Yeah, third day, Israel targeted my house, and I am civilians. We are civilian.
What happened?
So, in Gaza, you already have your emergency backpack. You just put some money and some document and blah, 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 and this stuff. So I was preparing it. That was my first time to preparing it because I thought that, I live in the middle of the city, no one can reach us, blah, blah, blah. And then I heard that noise in the street. I looked through my window. So our neighbors were asking us to go out of the building. So we said, we don't have to worry. We are not Hamas. We are not government. We are not nothing. We are just civilian. So I didn't...
You are civilian.
Yeah, I didn't even took my backpack, the one that I prepared it. So I said, okay, we will leave. Maybe they will target something near us. And the most thing that we can lose is just windows. And that's it. Because, when the pump happened, because of pressure, windows can just scratch, okay? So we were out. We were waiting for the strike. Ta-ta-ta-ta. My house was targeted. And we were all shocked because what the fuck is this? Why they targeted even it? We were the only people that they targeted our house at the third day of this genocide without any reason. And before targeting our building, they targeting another building that we already also own 3 offices there for my father and for my uncle. So we were wondering, do we have something and we don't know about it? Because we were shocked. And then after 3 days, on the 13th of October, they asked all the people to move from north to the south. I wish that to know that my answer at the beginning of genocide, but now, after destroying all the city, I feel like, okay, now we are the same.
Thank you for sharing it. I also want to ask Maurits de Bruijn on stage. A warm welcome to Maurits. What stayed with you the most from the opening words of Rita?
What stayed with me the most? I think in many ways it made me feel humble. It was humbling to listen to these words, and it made me, obviously, confronted me with how important your words and your work is, because as you write, mentioning how your words, you speak also for others, on others' behalf, who cannot. And that is also what your text reminds me of, all the people whose stories we cannot hear because they are either murdered or because of journalists not being able to enter Gaza, or journalists having been murdered by the IDF. So, yeah, it seems like words that echo way beyond you. And yeah, thank you for what you do.
You're so welcome.
Yeah, as I already mentioned, you're a writer. This year you published Geweten with Das Mag, a book about your journey to Israel and Palestine in 2025, February this year. And earlier you wrote the book Ook Mijn Holocaust in 2020 about the genocide on the Jews in which members of your family were murdered, and how that generational trauma still affects you. And in that book you also describe a journey to Israel from which you returned disillusioned.
Disillusioned, yes.
The word disillusioned about the country. So, yeah, that's really in short your
think it's a good summary.
Summary. So with that in mind, how did you experience the 7th of October?
In that moment, I don't know, initially it was very confusing, just the images. I don't know, it was something that I couldn't really like marry to what I know to be true, or how I know Israel, or at first the attack of October 7 just seemed incredibly surreal to me, and of course it made me want to contact the people I know there and see how they are doing and whether they're safe and whether their immediate family is safe. So firstly it was about that, and then what you just described so shortly after the retaliation from Israel, it made me realize how little average Dutch people at that time knew about the historical context in which October 7 had happened, and also Dutch politicians giving Israel carte blanche in their retaliation. And actually in our parliament it was mentioned that October 7 should not be put in historical perspective, but should be seen and judged in isolation. And that was very worrying to me. And I thought, I can do something here. It's a place I've been to before. It's about people that I know. There's human rights work there that I know, that I've been reporting on for years. I might have some of the knowledge that could correct this image and also could correct the way Dutch media was reporting on it, because as we know now, obviously, and still happens to some extent, to a lesser extent now than shortly after October 7, but the Israeli attacks on Gaza were always framed in a very passive tense, as if these bombs were like a circumstance of weather, like a type of rain, as if there was no culprit behind it, as if it was not completely detrimental to international law and the law of war and the international community as a whole, and human rights violations. These things were just, that was not the framework in which these attacks were brought to Dutch people, and it was not surprising, maybe, but yeah, maybe it was surprising in the end. I kind of couldn't believe that this extent of violations, this extent of war crimes, and the genocide that it culminated into was being ignored, and therefore also I feel facilitated, of course, to some extent. Yeah.
You already used the word genocide. When did you start using that word?
Why?
When?
Oh, when? I don't know exactly when. I know that shortly in December 23, I remember talking to someone about using the word, whether using it or not. And what we concluded on then, her and I together, not that it matters, I mean, it's not to us, but what we concluded on, and what I also wrote about in my book, you use the word genocide in order to prevent it. There's no point in using the word after the fact. There is a point in it, of course, but there's a point in using it after the fact to prevent another. And we've been using the word genocide for the Holocaust, for what happened to my family members, in order to prevent the next one. And we know that hasn't been true since 1945, but I've never seen the mechanics of denial work so clearly. I mean, we haven't been able to only witness genocide from here, from Amsterdam, from Holland, from our Western privileged bubbles, but we've also seen how denial plays a crucial part in it.
People of our age.
Sorry?
People of our age did not saw it, because you also have Srebrenica.
Right. But then still in real time, I think is different. The sense that okay, so I wrote and thought a lot about the Holocaust in my life because it's like what my life stems from, oddly enough, to some extent. And I also put a lot of time into thinking what knowing meant and what knowing, like, did Dutch people know, right, what was happening in the concentration camps? This is a question that's been asked by historians for decades and often concluded was people didn't know. And I read one of the researches done in the 90s by Dutch historians, and what they did was analyze diaries of Dutch Jews and Dutch non-Jews, and compare them and analyze them, seeing what did people know about what was happening in the concentration camps. And what I know is in 1943, my grandparents knew enough to hand their newborn baby, my mother, over to their neighbors, like a few weeks old baby. And who does that if you don't know how immediate and enormous the danger is that a newborn Jewish girl was in at that time? So that always spoke to me in that sense. And I had always, and of course, we didn't know. We hebben het niet gewusst is the umbrella term for like the German excuse of what happened during the Holocaust. We didn't know. Suggesting if we had known, the outcome would have been different, right? I think that's the only reason why you would use this argument. And now we know, and we have known, and we have been in that position for the past 2 years, and we see that it doesn't make any difference. It didn't save anyone in Gaza. It didn't save any innocent human being.
What do you think, Rita? And also as a reporter, trying to tell people what is happening, how do you cope with that? Do you also agree?
Yes, I agree with him. And I think also your experience was more different because you have two perspectives from Israel and Palestinian people. But if we are talking about reporting in general from Gaza or how it affects on others out of Gaza, I started with many outlets, with NRC, with La Repubblica, with the New Humanitarian. I'm still documenting movie and blah, blah, blah. And there's many stuff that I'm trying to do just to feel I'm from Gaza, but I'm trying all of these things just to feel that I'm doing something. And I always say it's not enough, even if I am from Gaza. Now I feel the same. I feel like I am helpless, I feel like I'm hopeless. And I feel nothing but pain. I always say this. But do you think that reporting or writing affect on people? Because this is the same question that I'm asking myself every night before doing anything. And maybe I did something difference between reporting and journalism and writing. When I started with many outlets, they asked me for reporting and articles and blah, 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 and numbers. So I told them, no, people out of Gaza don't want just numbers or don't want to write about killing and genocide. People want to know how we feel, how we live our life, how we live our day. So I started to write my diaries. And I think in that way, maybe it affects on others more than just reporting on Gaza. Because people out of, okay, for example, you are pro-Palestine. You support Palestine. You go to demonstrate and say, free Palestine. But okay, if I asked you some questions, you don't have any knowledge about it. You are not educated about the situation. So I was trying from my perspective to make these people to understand what's really going on. Now, I'm really surprised that there's a lot of people out of Gaza have this knowledge, know what's really going on. They maybe know about Gaza more than me, you know?
So you think it do makes a change? It do make a change?
I always say words can make a difference. I always say this, but I always say it's not enough. But it can make a difference. But it's not enough. But it can make a difference.
In your opening words, there was also a sentence, if we die tonight, please tell the world that we were ordinary people. We wanted to live. We had dreams. And I think it should go without saying. And still, as writers, your main goal, I suppose, maybe correct me if I'm wrong, is to make the world see that these injustices are being done to human beings, ordinary people with dreams. And how do you personally deal with the fact that many, and as I think especially those in power, tend to dismiss this human suffering and hide behind legal or political arguments?
In Netherlands or?
I think the West.
Okay, let's be honest. I will be honest with you. I'm from Gaza, I will be honest, not as a Gazan people. I will tell you, oh, you have just to support and not support. I will tell you. The Arabs left us alone. The West left us alone. What we did expect from others. If Arab people left Gaza alone, do we expect something from West? You understand what I mean?
Yeah, but still, don't you think it's also surprising?
No, it's not surprising.
No?
We expected this.
You always expected it?
For sure. Now I feel like Western are doing more Arabs. And I'm so proud of you. Thank you for being here. Really, thank you for being here.
Low.
I know that people always want to make difference, but if the power and the government don't want to make difference, they can't. What I think about the government in West, that they have the power to influence to stop the genocide from the beginning. So they were sending weapons, for example, and saying something different, okay? Just to feel like a relief and to forgive themselves as a government. But in general, also they are responsible about it, but I'm not blaming you. Not the people, not the ordinary people, because we are at the same stage now. But yeah, the government have the power to lead this genocide, to kill thousands and thousands and thousands of people. And we all know that government are responsible in somehow.
What do you think, Maurits?
No, I mean, completely. Part of why I write about the genocide is a lot of times people think that I do it because I'm Jewish and because genocide is in my family history, and it's true, but also because I'm Dutch and our government is complicit directly in what's been happening, and not just now, but a lot of what's happening in Israel stems from Western Europe, and Zionism stems from Western Europe. And the anti-Semitism that Zionists were trying to protect themselves against came from Western Europe and Eastern Europe. So this is very much also a Western problem, and a colonial problem, right? With roots in Western colonialism. And we see that now also with the so-called peace plan and ceasefire deal, which is not a ceasefire. We also see the colonial...
In what way do you see it?
...characteristics of it. How the British delegation is supposed to come there, and how I think there is the colonial aspect of the people that it is about, Palestinians. The indigenous people are not at the table, and they are not even, their names or the word Palestinians is not even being uttered. They're suffering, The genocide has not been acknowledged. There's no talk also about responsibility. You would think that if you would actually be able to create a ceasefire after genocide, the first thing you would make sure of doing is make sure that there's some kind of accountability. And I think Trump congratulated Netanyahu after the ceasefire. So it's very far from a situation of accountability. And our government is also accountable. So, and exactly what Rita says, if any Western government would have wanted it to stop, they could have done so on October 8th, 2023. And when I was there in February, I saw so many American flags there. I even saw a new kind of flag, which was a combination of the Israeli and the American flag. Like really an intertwined, and they are intertwined, obviously, so much. And they have always been, but now we see to what extent it means to have America as your biggest ally in geopolitical context. And I saw kepeltjes, yarmulkes, with a picture of Donald Trump on them. So this, yeah, I don't know, I think if anything, and that is also something that I completely subscribe to, what you say, is that, and that's something maybe that I hadn't expect, the extent that Dutch people were willing to educate themselves and mobilize themselves and make sure that we had the 3 biggest demonstrations we've had in our country in the past 20 years because of Gaza, because of Palestine. And I noticed that hunger for people to educate themselves, for people to take responsibility or accountability somehow in the light of so much injustice. And that is also why I wanted to write and publish a book and have it be tangible and refer to Palestinian historians and Palestinian thinkers and writers so that I could actually be a portal for people who this information has not been accessible to within our educational system, because our curriculum doesn't talk about the Nakba, it talks about the War of Independence in '48. And the word Palestinians is also not in our, high school or elementary school history books. The word Palestine is not there. When they talk about the end of the Ottoman Empire and they talk about all the countries that gained independence after that, in the place of where Palestine is, it only says Israel. It doesn't say anything else. And I've seen the maps, and I've seen them even like 6 months ago. And I think that is the next step to dismantle that whole idea and how apparent Zionism was, and that in Holland, and that we look in the mirror and actively engage in highlighting the marginalized history of Palestinians that has been marginalized also in our country. This was a really long answer. I'm not even sure what your question was anymore.
I think there are a lot of answers in that.
Can I ask you a question?
Yeah.
I forgot to ask you. You told me that in your book you wrote about Palestinians from West Bank. Did you interview people from Gaza?
No, I did not.
Okay.
No.
Why that question?
The question is, I will tell you something. If you want to make, inshallah, season 2 of your book, you have to interview people in Gaza, because you are talking about Palestine. And this is also a problem with Western media, that you feel like you are talking about Palestine, but they don't focus on Gaza. They separate Gaza about West Bank. They treat West Bank like it's the whole Palestine, and I understand for sure this. Now, I count myself, I'm only from Gaza. What's your country? Gaza. What's your city? Gaza. You are from Palestine? No, I'm Gaza.
And why?
I think Well, if I said this, many people will... but I think also West Bank didn't do anything. Let's be honest. When I said I am here for 2 million of Gazan people from Gaza, I'm only for 2 million Gazan people. I'm talking about the genocide. It happened in Gaza against Gazan people only. Please interview me next time.
I think you will. I also want to ask you to write a piece, 2 pieces actually, but start with the first from your book, the one about No Other Land. And I also have a disclaimer. He's going to read it in Dutch because there's no official translation yet. The people in the audience, you are going, and also on the screen, you're going to see a translation. So take in consideration that the translation is done by artificial intelligence and a little bit by me, and I'm not, and also artificial isn't not official translator.
This fragment takes place in Hebron. De gids keert terug, zegt dat het veilig is.
Ze hebben vertalingen op de
Oké. Ik dacht dat het op het scherm zou gebeuren. Oké. De gids keert terug, zegt dat het veilig is. Hij heeft zijn advocaat gebeld. Geveinsd dat wij een groep belangrijke mensen uit Europa zijn. Ik heb ze wijsgemaakt dat jullie diplomaten zijn, zegt hij. De gids heeft inmiddels met zowel de politie als de soldaten gesproken, die ons zullen vergezellen op weg uit deze stad. Geloof de soldaten niet, zegt de Palestijnse man. Ik moet ook de politie bellen, want die jonge mannen komen straks nog terug. Dat is het erge. Het is natuurlijk het hele idee dat wij, deze groep, vanuit onze bubbel in deze harde realiteit terechtkomen. Wij die dachten dat onze positie in het debat pittig was, pijnlijk soms, genadeloos. Wij die makkelijk praten hebben, maar juist omdat we makkelijk praten hebben, zijn we hier. Omdat wij deze realiteit een bredere reikwijdte kunnen geven. En ook, laten we dat niet vergeten, omdat Westerlingen eerder zullen luisteren naar ons dan naar Palestijnen. In dat precieze gevolg van ongelijkwaardigheid gaat veel van de kritiek schuil die een van de makers van No Other Land heeft ontvangen. De film die uit een samenwerking tussen Palestijn en Israëli voortkwam, won een Oscar. De overwinningstoespraak van de Israëlische Yuval Abraham stuitte op veel weerstand. Ze hadden deze film gemaakt omdat hun stemmen samen luider klinken, zei hij. Omdat de verwoesting van Gaza beëindigd moet worden, zoals de Israëlische gegijzelden bevrijd moeten worden. Eerste punt van kritiek. De pijn van Palestijnen werd gelijkgesteld aan die van Israëli's. Tweede punt, dat benadrukken van luider klingende stemmen is paternalistisch. Alsof Palestijnen niet zonder een Israëlische bondgenoot kunnen. Maar ik denk ook dat de ophef voortkwam uit het selectieve applaus van het Oscar-publiek. Dat luid klonk toen Abraham de gegijzelden noemde en stilviel toen het woord Gaza viel. Kort na de première van de film op de Berlinale wreekte die werkelijkheid zich al. Ook daar won de documentaire een prijs. Klonk een gelijksoortige speech van de 2 makers, waarna de Duitse minister van Cultuur, Claudia Roth, stelde dat ze uitsluitend voor de Israëlische filmmaker had geklapt en expliciet niet voor de Palestijnse. Het roept natuurlijk vragen op over hoe de ontvangst was verlopen als er geen enkele Israëlische maker bij betrokken was geweest. Of de film überhaupt ontvangen was, op festivals was geprogrammeerd, prijzen had kunnen winnen. Die vraag zouden we ook over dit boek kunnen stellen.
Rita, do you agree with Maurits that people tend to listen more to someone like Maurits than to not a Palestinian, but someone from Gaza?
With all respect, yes. Yes, I had always these issues when I was in Gaza, that I was seeing everyone is creating their own Palestinian community without knowing anything about Palestine or Gaza. And now I'm talking about the Arab people, not, the Western people have talked. And I was like, For example, you know that Arab people, most of them are Muslims. And for example, when I am from Gaza and I said, okay, khalas, we are tired, we are fucked up, stop this fucking genocide. They tell you, no, you are Muslim, you have to be resilient, you have to be killed, and blah, blah, blah. And I was like, I wish that you have this day to be here, like to experience, because this is the highest of our energy, you know? So you are killing people and now you are talking about religion. So I was looking at them like this. This is Arab people, that they want you to be hero, they want you to be killed, they want you to be resilience, because this is how they see Gazan people. For the Western, I always was upset when they want to talk about Gaza. There is no Palestinian or Gazan people at all. Thanks God, like it's only the Western perspective. So I said, like, I will be the Arab. You know, I will be the Gazan one. I know that there's a lot of voices from Gaza now, thanks God. But yeah, sometimes I feel like if it comes from Western perspective, it will influence more. I don't care. You know, I don't care. If it will influence more, just do it. If you will listen for the Western more than me, just do it. But please choose a Western people that they have the real knowledge about Gaza. So for me, I was a little bit upset, but then no. When I was talking to myself, I said, yeah, but if they are hearing to a Western perspective and he can influence or she can influence on them, do it. Go for it. I will support you.
Okay, and what kind of dilemmas do you face as someone from the West, but also a Jewish Dutchman, while you're trying to spread this message?
Well, yeah, it is a place of privilege, of course, in many, many ways, since I'm disconnected from the reality and are also protected from this reality. I feel always the responsibility to be aware of that and to also exercise my privilege when I can. So, for example, being able to travel to Israel in February was also me applying my privilege, and the fact that I can walk around in Jerusalem, West Jerusalem, or in Tel Aviv, and people behave unassuming towards me, especially because I'm Jewish. So people talked very freely with me, and I was able also, first of all, let's say, I was able to enter the country. But this power imbalance that is part of the discourse, not just in the physical reality, but also is replicated in the discourse, you could say, is something, yeah, that's why I wanted to incorporate it in my book, also to make the reader aware of the perspective that you're reading this from, and also maybe why you are inclined to read it sooner than the words of Palestinians. So I thought the reception of No Other Land was actually a very clear-cut example of it.
But on the other hand, you also say in the book that there's a specific Jewish person here in the Netherlands that's more often being listened to in the media.
Right.
And I think you don't mean other than yourself.
Right. You mean Zionist Jewish voices in Dutch media.
Yeah, the question is, what kind of Jewish person do you mean?
Right,
yeah.
right. I feel that especially after October 7, for sure. In Dutch media, there was no Palestinian perspective, first of all. And there was a Jewish perspective on October 7th, first of all, and then talk about the retaliation or the war, the genocide. Even that was discussed with Jewish people mostly initially in the first months. And then not, I thought, people that showed a pluriform image of Jewish communities in Holland as I know it. Because I know a lot of Dutch Jews who are anti-Zionist. I also know a lot of Dutch Jews who are Zionists, but it was obvious which of the two was prevalent in Dutch media. And also sometimes...
So maybe not obvious for us?
No, sometimes there was... at one point there was a Dutch talk show and they interviewed a Dutch writer, she's Jewish, and she talked about her sister who lives, they said, in Israel, and they had a live connection with her through Skype or Zoom. And I saw the Zoom image and I heard the interview and they talked about her fears after October 7. Also there, of course, is this bias of whose fears are being addressed, whose fears are being acknowledged and discussed, and whose position is humanized. But when I saw the woman and when I heard her talk about her position and her immediate surroundings, I realized, I think she's a settler living in the West Bank. And this was not addressed during the conversation, also not afterwards when they went back to the Dutch woman in the studio.
Did you fact check it yourself later on?
I didn't fact check it, but
you were sure.
There is a headdress that is very specific through settler women living mostly in the West Bank, illegally, under international law. And if you interview someone like that for Dutch media, if you were to do so, that already is a step. But if you want to do it for journalistic reasons, it's important to acknowledge that context, right? No, I'm 100% certain that this was the case. So, and also, I realized also before October 7, if I was ever interviewed to speak on Zionism in Dutch media, they always invited me in a context where I had to go in discussion with someone who's on the opposite side of the spectrum. And of course, that's how media works, especially how Dutch talk shows work. And this was also something that I was not and am not willing to cooperate in, to always portray this as a dualistic, because human rights is not something you could have. You could either be for or against. That's why we have human rights in the first place. And that's why we have international law. So I think allowing yourself to go there on national television and make them debatable is also acknowledging that you could have different valid positions on it. And that's not the case. So.
Yeah, and Rita, are you also aware of your position as someone from Gaza when you're doing interviews or writing a piece, and how people react on that position?
The people in Gaza?
No, I mean the people here. Who are
Okay,
reading
here?
the NRC,
Okay,
for example.
let's talk about NRC.
Okay.
If we can talk about it.
I'm not censoring you.
At the beginning, I was so mad because they were also making their own perspective about that, just using war, world, instead of genocide. And then I said, like, yeah, we need to change a lot of things in NRC. But I wasn't alone. There were many people in NRC that they were trying to make this justice and to make this topic available at NRC more and more. I had my colleague Lucia. She was working so fucking hard for this, and not only for Gaza, also for West Bank. But I don't want to talk just about NRC. I want to talk in general. I think the media in general destroyed the right images about what's happening in Gaza at the beginning of the genocide. And I was also mad at the beginning that it's only like the Western perspective without including any Arab people. Or us, sorry, we are not talking about Arab, we are talking just about Gazan people. Even for the Arabic channels and Arabic outlets, they were fucked up. They were literally fucked up because I just explained.
What do you mean by they? Like the people who were talking, or do you mean like
the people who are reporting about what's happening in Gaza? When you have like agency or something like channel, I'm not going to say it clearly. I would, to be honest, but I can't. But I would. But they are looking at us like as if they are heroes or resilience. And they just fake the real about what's going on and what's happening in Gaza. And they are Arabic. Like, they are Arab. So I always keep reminding myself, what do I expect from West if Arab people are doing this? But now, I'm telling you, like, there is a lot of changing in the media, and especially in the Western media. Before the Arab people don't do anything, but let's be with Western. Yeah, there's a lot of influence and there's a lot of changes that happened because of the 7th of October. Maybe at the beginning they were like hiding a little bit and they were not brave enough to say what's really going on in Gaza. And sometimes I don't blame them because I said like international journalists were not allowed to enter Gaza. So it was also at the beginning so hard to reach local people and local journalists, you know? Yeah, but then خلاص, يعني, I realized that many things changed. Okay, it's too late, but I always say at least it changed.
Do you also see changes?
Sure. And I know from a lot of people working in Dutch media that have tried to push for better news reporting, because it was also just bad reporting if you're not doing your duty as a journalist. In this case, if you're not telling the full story, or if your reporting is biased. And I know a lot of Dutch journalists working for newspapers, working for news organizations on television, that saw to what extent there was a bias within the company they worked for. And I know a lot of people who've tried to fight it from within, and it took a very long time. And I'm also not saying that it's completely fixed. I think what's also, this is first of all, I think it's detrimental to so many things. In the first case, it's about the task of journalism that is not being fulfilled. But what's also happening, of course, I think it's creating a bigger context and a bigger opportunity actually for injustice to flourish and for Israel to get away with all they got away with so far. And it drives the people who do know, who are more aware within Holland, away from news reporting because they lose trust in it, and rightfully so. And I've talked about this with someone working from NOS, the Dutch national news broadcaster, and they said to me, we do better now, and I feel so bad that a lot of Dutch young people, a young audience, has turned their back to the NOS news.
Yeah, this is bitter.
But what else can they do? So I think also this creates a bigger division between average people and it's journalism is supposed to be an instrument of a functioning democracy, and that's also failing here and has failed. Yeah.
Can I say something
of course.
also about the media in general? Well, I was also upset about many things, but in a different way. I wasn't upset because they were using war instead of genocide, or war on Gaza instead of genocide. We all know what's this, okay? But I was mad because they were only searching for a fucking specific thing. They were just only talk about hostages for Israeli, Hamas, and all politics. طب يا حبيبي, say something about the civilians. Say something about what's really happening there. And they are always know how to find excuses when Israel targeting something. For example, Israel targeted hospital. Oh, because under the hospital there is hidden secret places for Hamas. Okay, what about the people have been killed? What about the hundreds have been killed? So, you understand what I mean? Like, they only want the specific thing to talk about, but they don't fucking care about the civilians. The civilians are not existed. That's what I felt.
And that's also the reporting you were doing. Or maybe not reporting, but writing. The human stories.
Yeah, I always say, like, we are fucked up because people still believe in international laws and the human rights, but it didn't exist. The people that they are talking about the human rights and talking about international laws, they are sending weapons to kill us. Okay? The government that they are asking for this specific stuff, okay, but you are sending weapons to Israel to kill us. What do you expect from me? And the most thing that I was really upset about it, that they were calling the Israeli hostages and the Palestinian prisoners. Habibi, there's big difference. Prisoners mean that you have a crime or something like this and you go to jail and خلصنا, okay? But also Israel arrested these people and they are hostages. Even if they didn't do anything, they call them prisoners. And I have also some organizations that they are reporting in a wrong way about what's happening in Gaza. And I was like, what the fuck is this? If the organizations of human rights and international laws are saying this or doing this, like, what we can do more to explain for other people out of Gaza what's really happening there. Wallahi, I was every day telling myself I'm going to quit journalism, and fuck writing, and fuck the other people, and fuck out of Gaza, and khalas, I want to die, and if I died, I don't want anyone to care about anything.
But you kept on writing.
I can't. Yeah, I couldn't do it. I was always keep reminding myself, you can change something. But I am tiny, Rita. I'm just a baby, I'm really just a baby, like facing the power of the government and the presidents and all the people all around the world, but I'm just one. But in general, we need many of this.
Yeah,
but now I am honest. Like, thanks God, the Western media changed a lot, but not that much. But yeah, it's too late, but it's better than nothing.
Okay, thank you. I want to ask you to write a second piece from your book. Do we need to know something before you start?
Maybe. Yeah, I think it's good to give a little context maybe. This fragment, it takes place actually shortly upon arrival in Tel Aviv. Vanuit de bus zie ik de personenauto's voorbij rijden. Gele stickers op de zijkanten, gele lintjes om de deuren, gele vlaggetjes op de daken. Sinds oktober 23 is het gele lintje en in het verlengde daarvan alles wat die kleur draagt, symbool geworden voor de Israëlische gegijzelden. Een oude vrouw heeft hangertjes in de vorm van een geel lintje aan haar tas hangen. Ze draagt beige Dior-laarsjes en vraagt iedereen naar de halte waar ze wil uitstappen. Aan hekken en balkons hangen grote banners met portretten. Een foto van een vrouw, rechts daarvan haar naam en haar leeftijd. Inbar Haiman, 27. In december 23 bleek Inbar te zijn vermoord door Hamas-strijders. Op de afrasteringen rond een bouwplaats. End this fucking war, gevolgd door Make Israel normal again. Aan de promenade langs het strand hangen meer banners. Ik zie niet langer het zand of de zee, maar kilometers aan foto's. Op vrijwel iedere lantaarnpaal zitten stickers met foto's van overleden IDF-soldaten. Uitsluitend mannen. Vrouwelijke soldaten worden over het algemeen op minder risicovolle posten gezet. Op elke sticker een citaat dat het karakter van de man in kwestie moet omvatten. Er blijken gloednieuwe Israëlische vlaggen te bestaan, waarbij het gele lintje door de Magen David is gevlochten. In een binnenbalkon hangt een vlag die een combinatie vormt van de Israëlische en de Amerikaanse. Net als het speldje van de beveiligingsmedewerker op Schiphol verwijzen al deze symbolen naar de bondgenoten waarop deze staat leunt. Zonder deze medestanders zou Israël zoals we het kennen niet kunnen bestaan. Zonder de bewapening en steun van het machtigste leger ter wereld. Zonder de gekmakende veto's bij de VN die tegen een staakt het vuren worden ingezet, bestaat de schatteloosheid van dit land niet. Weet iedere Israëli. En wie het niet weet, hoeft alleen maar naar die vlaggen te kijken. Op de markt zie ik een keppeltje met een foto van Donald Trump en zijn bekende leus. Ik durf er geen foto van te maken uit vrees dat de man die het walgelijke ding verkoopt me erop zal aanspreken. Wie de afgelopen 1,5 jaar niet het nieuws heeft gevolgd, zou uit alle visuele signalen precies kunnen afleiden welk verdriet zich hier wreekt. De onooglijke fontein bij Dizengoff Center is getransformeerd tot een monument dat bezaaid is met briefjes die zijn gericht aan de gijzelaars. Vlakbij een museum staat een haag coniferen waaraan hun foto's als vruchten hangen. Grote papieren zonnebloemen die ik al snel leer herkennen als nog een verwijzing naar die ene gevraagde dag. Graffiti van mensen die in een ondergrondse tunnel zitten. Een labrador met een gebreid geel lint om zijn nek. Een labrador. Elke, maar dan ook elke winkel heeft op de voorpui een sticker met gele letters geplakt. Bring them home. Veruit de meeste cafés en restaurants hebben ergens een zwarte poster hangen waarop de foto's van alle 251 gegijzelden prijken. Mijn eerste avond bezoek ik het appartement van de man die hier in Tel Aviv 14 jaar geleden mijn werk cureerde. Hij omarmt me met een zachte vanzelfsprekendheid. De wanden van zijn huis hangen vol foto's, schilderijen, overal staan sculpturen. Hij is gefrustreerd, wint zich vanaf zijn enorme bank op over de wijze waarop de Israëlische media al het nieuws rond de gegijzelden uitmelken. Zijn bank wordt omkaderd door een raampartij die uitzicht geeft op een van de drukste straten van de stad. Naast hem ligt een hoopje witte krudde die hij zijn hond mag noemen en die hij ook al zijn hond noemde toen hij mijn werk tentoonstelde. Ik aai het dier en kan bijna niet geloven dat het hetzelfde wezen is. Ongezond vindt hij het, dat constant vastleggen van iedere stap. Sinds een paar weken vloeit uit het recente staakt het vuren de wekelijkse vrijlating van de gegijzelden voort. Media blikken vooruit met portretten van de mensen die vrijgelaten zullen worden en vullen die items aan met interviews met de achtergebleven familieleden. Ze leggen de eigenlijke vrijlatingen uitvoerig vast, schrijven gedetailleerde stukken waarin de specifieke omhelzingen na terugkeer worden geanalyseerd, interviewen de gegijzelden op de eerste dag na vrijlating, de tweede en ook de derde dag, beschrijven hun fysieke staat, hun mentale welzijn en zo wordt iedereen hier gek gemaakt, zegt de man. Het ziet er inderdaad uit als collectieve waanzin, zeg ik. die ik ook terugzie in het straatbeeld, vertel ik hem. Al begrijp ik de drang om aan de hand van fysieke artefacten te getuigen van een vorm van verlies. Omdat verlies per definitie immaterieel is, voeg ik daaraan toe. Om af te tasten hoe ver ik in mijn kritiek kan gaan. Iedereen die rouw kent begrijpt die drang, al gaat het om een rouwkaartje dat in het schap van een boekenkast een plek krijgt, een kaarsje ervoor. Maar dat verklaart slechts ten dele wat ik hier aantref. Dit gaat verder. Dit is obsessief. Dit is wat er gebeurt wanneer een volk zich blind staart op de pijn waardoor het getroffen wordt. Voorafgaand aan mijn reis stoorde ik me aan mijn Israëlische kennissen, die op social media enkel en alleen portretten van gegijzelden posten, zonder ooit te getuigen van de bizarre nieuwe werkelijkheid die hun leger in Gaza aanricht. En dit hier is daar de driedimensionale variant van. Wat ik me vaak heb afgevraagd is of die posts op Facebook en Instagram daadwerkelijk illustreren dat men zich uitsluitend met de Israëlische slachtoffers bezighoudt. Of dat sociale wetten iedere andere soort post nu eenmaal onmogelijk maken. Maar ik durf de curator daar niet naar te vragen. Duidelijk is dat deze eenzijdige blik niet toevallig is ontstaan. Die is gecultiveerd. Het directe resultaat van de berichtgeving in de Israëlische media maakt dat men hier in een staat van uitgestelde rouw leeft, die dagelijks wordt gemicrodoseerd door het constant verslag leggen van alle gebeurtenissen rond de gegijzelden. Om toe te komen aan rouw dient het onheil te stollen, en dat gebeurt hier niet. Misschien kan dat ook niet in het geval van een gijzeling. Palestijnse rouw kan zich zeker niet voltrekken in het geval van een genocide die nog maar net is gestaakt en wanneer dat staken wordt gecompenseerd door oplaaiend leger- en kolonistengeweld op de Westoever.
Thank you, Maurits. Yeah, I have a few questions and then I'm also going to you, the audience. Yeah, you wrote this one-sided gaze did not arise by accident, it was cultivated. In what way do you think it was cultivated?
Well, in many ways, and we also know, of course, that so much of Israeli media, not all of it is controlled by Netanyahu and his government, and news from Gaza is not broadcasted to a large extent. I always do mention that it is available. There is at least one newspaper, Haaretz, that does report on the genocide and also uses the word genocide and has been using it for a long time. Actually, this newspaper since October 7 gained 100,000 new subscribers, but all from outside of Israel.
Okay.
So that is a very telling development. This is not a newspaper that is popular in Israel, and it's also a newspaper that is being stigmatized by the government as being left-wing, and left-wing in general is, to be a lefty is a slur in Israel. If you're called a lefty, it doesn't mean anything good. So this one-dimensional view on what's happening, it's not even one-dimensional maybe, it's an exclusionary view on pain that it only acknowledges Israeli pain, of course, and completely denies pain of Palestinians in Gaza. I knew that beforehand, and I knew some of how it would manifest, but I didn't realize that. And especially in Tel Aviv, because in Jerusalem, in West Jerusalem, was not the reality that I saw. But in Tel Aviv, it basically functions as one big, perpetual monument for the ongoing suffering. Yeah. And I think by now a lot of people also know that here, that the Hostages Square, which I partly described, which is an installation that also travels over into other places in the world. And if you walk through it, you hear gunfire through speakers, and there's photos of the hostages on the outside of this tunnel. So, yeah, I saw a very...
People are getting a tunnel vision because of the tunnel, I think.
Right. It was it made me even more cynical, I thought, this exclusionary view on suffering.
Can you explain it? That one-sided view, how it has been cultivated?
Yeah, I mean, I think in general, the view a lot of Israelis have is that they have an exclusionary position, right, in the Middle East, surrounded by enemies. That is the story that Israelis are raised with, that is the Zionist part of the fairy tale, kind of, that is being told to them. That's also the way that the Israeli map is shown in classrooms. It actually doesn't have any neighboring countries. It is only Israel. And I think for me, also as a Western person, it's hard to understand what this level of militarization does to a society, and also this level of dehumanization of Palestinians that they've been subjected to. So the way that I see it is that they've lost a part of their humanity because they no longer see the humanity in others.
And how do you think that the genocide on the Jews and during the World War II affects the way people are looking at the genocide on Gazan people right now?
Yeah, this narrative of the Holocaust obviously is a very important pillar of the Israeli national identity and their story, and rightfully so, of course. That is not a fiction. It is truly, of course, a nation of people that are partly descendants from the Holocaust. So that is understandable, but the way that it's being instrumentalized, of course, October 7th was often called another Holocaust. Right, there was the Israeli ambassador in the UN who put the yellow star of David on his jacket. And the literal words were uttered that they were perpetuating a genocide in order to prevent one. That was what we were made to believe, right? We're killing Palestinians in Gaza so that we can prevent another genocide happening to Israeli Jews. And that's what fascism does, right? It uses this, it turns around all the arguments and the reality we know to be true and turns it on its head and spins it another way and then gives you that as if it was a reasonable argument. So we're preventing the suffering of genocide by committing one. And they legitimized the genocide in Gaza with the suffering of my grandparents, my ancestors. So that also was one of the main reasons, that things that fired me up and infuriated me and made me also raise my voice. Yeah.
You also feel extra responsibility because of that?
Of course, and also because I try to carry this legacy of the Holocaust into the present day. I see that as one of my moral obligations in the world. It has to mean something, that I come from that. And a lot of what it means to me revolves around my writing. And I think it should be obvious to more people that you can have this history in your genes, in your blood, in your culture, and become a true pacifist, right? That should be very obvious. And I think also the way that we talk about trauma, because I think often it serves as an apology for Israeli politics, for Zionism, right? Their collective trauma. And I think that can never be, that's a very dark explanation, and also actually is detrimental to our view of people that have been through suffering like that, as if they can only become perpetrators. If there's Holocaust in your history, or genocide, or dehumanization on that scale, you can still become many, many things, not just a perpetrator.
How do you listen to that, Rita?
I think he's right about everything, and to be honest, you label a lot of things.
Sorry?
You label a lot of things, like.
Because I don't like labels.
I
that's
don't
also,
like to label a lot of
why
things.
We invited you for the Free Thinkers
I came
Festival.
here to Europe, and I started to hear and to listen to new words. But I feel like I knew it, or I know these words, what it means. And then I said, like, okay, when you are here in Europe, you have to be educated enough to know how to label things.
You also told me that I label a lot when we first met.
The first time I saw her, I told her, like, I hate label things, and because she was explaining for me many things, and I was like, I was waiting for her to tell me, because, like, I'm from Gaza. We don't know the labels and what it means to label these stuff, especially in politics, and especially with the like the Holocaust and blah blah blah. I all knew it here and in Gaza because of journalism. If I didn't become a journalism, I wish, but I have never ever want to know what does that mean, because it's really a crime against humanity, the things that happen. And you are talking about carrying the weight and carrying the heavy about your past generation of your family and your mother especially. Unfortunately, for Jewish people in general, I know a lot of Jewish people and they are so kind. When you are hearing them, how they suffered in the Second World War or in the Holocaust and in this stuff, you feel like you want to talk to them. Like, for example, I want to talk to Jewish people because they will understand what we lived. And you are trying to keep this generation aware about what's really happening. So now we are comparing about what's happening before many years and what's happening here and nowadays in Gaza. And we realize that humans are so weird, because sometimes I say, like, we are 2025, we must to live peace and not worry about the future and blah, blah, blah. But then I realized that humans are always going to make a crime against the humanity. So talking about Holocaust or genocide or war or anything, it will create many generations that they are traumatized from everything. I think that I'm traumatized also, but I don't know specific, like, in what, because I'm trying just to calm down and be patient with everything, and sometimes I feel like I'm shocked of myself, because I know people that they evacuated from Gaza, they were breaking down all the time till now, but no, I feel like maybe I'm better. I don't know the secret, but maybe because especially...
You're shocked that you're not breaking down.
No. I was strong enough. And also, this is also a trauma, because you are escaping from the relief and the grief and the tears and everything, but this is also trauma.
Of course.
You know? But to be honest, not because I am here in Amsterdam or something like this. I went for Italy, I went to France, and I just moved to Netherlands. I'm so honest that people here in Netherlands, and I was shocked, they have a real knowledge about what's happening in Gaza. You know? I thought that Italian people will know everything. Okay, they know. But people here are so educated about what's really going on, because, and then I realized that, because of Jewish people. The Jewish people, Aslan, they lived something like this. So here I started to feel like, okay, I am home, I can talk to Jewish people. My producer, by the way, she's Jewish.
The documentary?
Yeah, the documentary movie, and she's Jewish, and she's like a godmother, and she's always telling me, like, you are my adopted daughter. we were in Paris before 2 months, and I was worrying about not getting my visa to come to Netherlands, because I was so patient to come to Netherlands. Okay, I have always loved Netherlands, even before the genocide. And then she told me, Rita, can I tell you something? That was her first time to share something like this with me. And she told me like her grandmother lived the Holocaust, and she's Jewish, and she knows the suffer of people. And every time she was seeing me, she told me like, I remember what my grandmother told me, that be human, people don't deserve to suffer in their life. So now I feel like the same way that she feel about me, that she's responsible and she have to take care of me and blah, blah, blah. And you are also from generation that they lived the Holocaust. Now, for example, I was telling, before the talk, I was told them like, the problem here in Western people, that when they want to make something for Gaza, they ignore all the suffer, and they have the anger to just talk about Gaza. But no, this is also wrong. You have also to take care of yourself. You have your own suffer. You have your own suffer. Everyone have own suffer, but you say like, okay, we didn't live what Gazan people lived in their life. But also this is a wrong way. But at the same time, I say like also it's a trauma. Because people want to feel that they are doing something, but they are making hard on themselves, and they are traumatized. So even if you didn't live the Holocaust or genocide, the people that they will support you, they will be traumatized. You know, because, for example, I met old woman in Italy, and she's on her wheels. And I was telling her, and she's not Jewish, she's Christian. And I was telling her, like, could you please just take care of yourself? And she was like, don't worry about me. I didn't suffer the way that you suffered in your life. And I was like, no, don't think that way.
She was also crying, right?
Yeah, she was crying. She was really crying in front of me, and I was like, I know, maybe because I have knowledge about psychological way, I know how to handle these situations. So I knew that when she saw me, she felt that she's helpless and hopeless about help me or something like this. So when I asked her about her health, she told me, no, this is nothing compared to your situation in Gaza. So I told her, hey, stop. You are a human. I am a human. You have your own suffer. I have my own suffer. So we don't need to look at these things that way, because also this is toxic and this is trauma. So I think everyone now is traumatized because of the fucked up about what's happening about against the humanity. Like, it's a crime against the humanity, not only people in Gaza, but also about out of Gaza. Because I'm really sure that people feel helpless and feel like now they are responsible more, and they appreciate the things. And as I told you, they don't look at their suffer in a right way, but they say like, oh, but it's nothing compared about what's happening in Gaza. But I tell everyone, like, please just take care of yourself. If you have the chance to be grateful at the end of the day, be grateful at the end of the day. Be grateful about the drinks that you have, the real food that you have. Just be human as much as you can. Help each other. World is nothing, but Yeah, I think we are really traumatized.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your inspiring words and that you did not stop writing and sharing your story. And now we're going to your favorite part of the evening.
The audience.
Are there some questions from the audience? Yeah.
I thank you so much for sharing. Oh yeah, clever. Don't let go of the mic. I have a question for Rita, and thank you so much for your important messages to all of us. If you could give one or two or multiple pieces of advice to journalists that have the right intentions, that want to do the job they're journalists for, what kind of advice would you give them? How can they do a better job? Yeah.
You mean better job in general or on Gaza?
I think specifically on Gaza, but also, specifically on Gaza, but also I think you can't do a better job on Gaza unless you change the type of journalist you are or how you practice your profession, because...
Are you going to answer the question yourself?
Gaza, but it stands for much more. You can't improve your work on Gaza if you don't place it in a bigger context and patterns. Yeah.
Okay, I will tell you something. I didn't study journalism. I'm not a real journalist. I always say this. The war forced me to be a journalist, but I'm not a journalist. I don't want to end up with me killing myself by smoking and drinking because the war acting crazy. I don't want to spend my whole life being journalist. But unfortunately, I'm just doing this because my mission didn't end yet. Even if they ceasefire, the fucking fake ceasefire. But now we will realize many stories about Gaza. So when they asked me to be a journalist in Gaza, I was so honest that I don't have experience. So I said, okay, be honest. Whatever it takes. You can talk about anything. Just be honest about everything. And I was always saying, like, Rita, your opinion as a Rita is not that important. You are just talking behalf the 2 million people in Gaza. So every time I was trying to write something, even if it was from my imagination, I was listening to other people, many perspectives, to know what people really care about. And for me, it's not also about, like, for example, if you are a journalist out of Gaza and you want to be in touch with Gazan people, I always say, go to local people and hear their stories. If you can, give them a chance to talk by themselves, do it. I always say, let your own perspective away and let the Gazan people talk about themselves. They don't need someone to talk about them, you know? Okay, you don't, for example, NRC gave me, and La Repubblica gave me this opportunity to not be a fixer. And I would never, ever want to accept it, like, to be a fixer. What does that mean? Like, I give you the information and the article, it will be by your name because you are Western and I'm Arab. No, I didn't accept it. And there is, unfortunately, a lot of outlets that they are doing this, taking the information from local, and khalas. I am the Western, my name will appear on my article, I don't fucking care about the rest. So I think that just let the Gazan people talk about themselves, it will be my only advice, the only one for everyone want to really talk about what's going on in Gaza.
Yeah. Thank you. One more question from the audience.
Hi. I have a couple of questions for both, but I could just... okay. All right. So I'll go for Rita again. I wanted to know, because clearly you have a very strong individuality and personality, and it really shines through your writing, the way you express yourself. And so how do you reconcile people meet you, especially here in the Netherlands, in France, in Italy, and they see you and they see Gaza, right? And they see Gazan peoples. And you want that as well because you want to represent those voices. But how do you reconcile being you and representing your people? Like, is it a strange tension? Do you feel like just being you sometimes?
Okay, this is also, I'm trying also to do it. If I want to be me, a real me, I will break down all the time. So what I'm trying to do just to shut off my feelings, I know this is also another kind of trauma, we will skip it. But I think also it requires for our job as a journalist, because when you are a journalist, you have not to be emotional, to be able to listen to others. So when I see people, for example, in front of me that they are crying about what's happening in Gaza, I say like, okay, now I'm responsible to make you feel okay about me. And sometimes I feel like I can handle it, but sometimes I'm also human and I'm a little baby, tiny Rita. So I feel like I'm overwhelming. And every time I said like, khalas, I'm not going to do it again. I'm not going to do any speech. I'm not going to talk anymore. I'm not going to talk. But then I see people asking me questions. I was like, yeah, just ask me whatever you want, And it's not something easy. I'm not talking about a normal city. I'm talking about people have been killed for almost 2 years. People have been starvation and have been hunger and just killing in not normal way. And you are just here to keep reminding people about what's happening in Gaza. So the only way I'm trying to do is just not feel anything. And I'm so professional about it. And even when I'm trying to tell others about what's happening in Gaza, I'm always trying to make it lighter for them. Because if I was angry and I was like, yeah, but you didn't do this and you didn't do that, you as a Western perspective, you will feel heavy. And we are both human. I don't want you to feel the same way that I feel it. If I can be human with you, I can make you feel what I feel without being angry. I hate holding anger against anything. This is not me at all. This is the real me, that I don't hold anger about what's happening in Gaza against people, that they want to support what's happening in Gaza. So I'm trying always to be chill as much as I can. Sometimes I don't succeed it. I try to shut off everything. And everyone is asking me also why you are always laughing and smiling. And I think this is also another kind of a trauma that, when you have a lot of pressure, you feel like your mind is protecting you, so you feel like you need to light these things on yourself, so you start laughing. Not because it's a funny thing, but it's also a way for myself just to, okay, and that's it.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Thank you, Maurits de Bruijn. Thank you, Rita Baroud. And also thank you for being here. And have a nice evening.